To find out how we survived the global pandemic, a product development update of a startup business on a bootstrapped financial runway, stay tuned. Wow, it's been 6 months since my last update, and I have been putting this off for quite a while, so that's the main reason. Loads of progress has been made. But before we talk about the global situation, let's just talk about where we left off last, which was testing of the Mark II Quentin product, which was the Hermes to SMEMA adapter. So I finally got a test slot in, which was Friday afternoons, which is quite obvious actually, because a lot of engineering companies shut down traditionally Friday afternoons to incentivize their staff to meet their deadlines, I guess, during the week, or maybe to have a little bit of a slippage point if they need it. I'm not sure, but a lot of engineering companies do that. Quite obvious now, so that would probably be the test slot I will take in the future. Unfortunately, immediately after this testing, lockdown occurred, so I wasn't able to do it again. But let's just go over some video I took along the day. So this is the Mark II Cube form factor dual lane adapter box. So this, just a reminder, this runs the MultiPlug Edge Computing Platform. It has an extension on top of it, which is the Hermes software, and then it has the SMEMA hardware all built in as one box. We've moved on to dual lane because well, two major reasons. Firstly, dual lane is becoming a thing. Having said that, just using two of the boxes on each line would have worked. But also, I went to a meeting with an equipment manufacturer, and they had a legacy product that they were a piece of equipment that they were trying to upgrade to Hermes. They upgraded the middle part, the actual main piece of equipment, but it actually had two dumb conveyors on each side that were actually part of the machine, and so they were trying to find a solution to upgrade those dumb conveyors to the Hermes Standard. And while I went to the meeting for just to understand the Hermes Standard, it was actually a Hermes Standard meeting, they proposed using two of the adapters inside the machine, and I pushed back at that point because the product wasn't mature enough. And you've got two mindsets of whether you have high configuration, meaning potentially in that situation you would have 3 PCs to configure, because the Hermes adapter is a PC in itself, which seemed a bit of an overkill from a customer's point of view, an end customer's point of view. The other option is to have a potential single point of failure. So, and I explained why that isn't this solution here. Just using the box, you wouldn't have a single point of failure just using the box. But I took their requirement, and I thought to myself, well, actually, what you need is the software to be running on your existing platform, your existing PC, and you can run the MultiPlug and the Hermes software extension on your existing PC, and you might just need other hardware, just an I/O box essentially, to do the SMEMA connections. And so I spec'd up the solution to them, and I was proposing to use actually a Brainbox ED-038, 2 of them in the machine, because it has the correct amount of hardware, I/O hardware for the SMEMA interface, and that would connect to the existing PC. The existing PC would then run the software, the MultiPlug software and the Hermes extension, and that was a great test of whether this solution is modular, and it is exactly modular. And obviously we're working in the world of IoT, and while I think certain companies will want to support certain solutions, there should be options to change that solution to go with your own piece of hardware or other software or whatever. And so that tested that concept quite nicely, and I was in that meeting, I was like thinking on my feet, trying to think of a solution for them. So I proposed that to them, which meant they could use off-the-shelf hardware, and really from our point of view, we were only really supporting the software at that point, rather than a product that was in progress being developed. The software side of it is quite mature. It's the hardware that's being put through its paces at the moment. So it was a really good test of that, but also it demonstrated to me that actually dual lane might be an option, or either having hardware distributed along the line but having a centralized software point. Now, I was talking about single point of failure. Well, actually, if that software went down, it would take down all the nodes along the line at that point, but realistically the line would be dead at that point anyway, if one of the nodes goes down anyway, so it wouldn't be a major problem. But it just got me to test the solution, and I proposed that solution to them. But then also it highlighted that maybe actually we should create a dual lane adapter just in case for solutions in the future. So that's what we've done. So this is actually a dual lane. This product here is actually the Mark II is actually a dual lane. So you've got a matrix of LEDs that aren't labelled at the moment. From top to bottom it goes machine ready, good board, bad board. So the LED on at the moment is the SMEMA. SMEMA's yellow, Hermes is green, and then you've got lane 1 and lane 2. So first two columns are lane 1, and the third column and fourth column is lane 2. So we're only testing one lane in this situation. So at the moment it's yellow, which means the conveyor is telling the SMEMA interface that it is ready. I'm using the laptop behind to simulate the machine, the Hermes machine next door. So just play that. So Hermes goes, good board ready. The conveyor belt starts moving, and if you see the yellow LED has gone off because now the machine wouldn't be ready because it's got a board in the machine. The Hermes green light there would have gone off much quicker because it would have said no longer wanting to put a board into the machine. And now the yellow good board light has come up, which then gets fed back into the Hermes software, and the Hermes software then mimics that downline. So now we have to mimic a downline machine. So we just quickly switch that upline off. Machine, the board is waiting. The machine's saying it's a good board. So that board would then go into the next machine. Conveyors are moving. Same situation again. So that worked fine. That worked all fine. The next test was injecting a board into the machine when there's no Hermes information. So placing a board into the machine goes, good board ready, and the Hermes software going, hang on, wait a minute, there's no, I don't know anything about this board. So let's place the board onto the machine or the conveyor. Pass button simulates the wanting to move the board out of the machine, and this demonstrates the browser-based interface that pops up gets you to enter the board information. Now, realistically, in a real-world situation, the board moving would have triggered a scan event from a barcode reader, and the barcode reader would then go up to a database or a MES, fetch the information and populate this field. So you probably wouldn't, this user interface wouldn't actually pop up, but it's just a manual approach that pretty much wouldn't occur in the real world, I don't think. It's just there just in case. So I'm just entering some product information, saving it, and then if you look at the middle there, you will see it's in the station, and it's known as thread 1. And if you just look to the downline, you can see all the boards that have exited the machine, and I believe the standard has a lookup of either 30 or 50 or something like that, so it has to remember all the boards that have sent through in case downline machines need to interrogate it. There's also a level of forecasting, so you can say there's a board in the machine at the moment, and you forecast it to the machine downline, so the machine downline can get ready for that board if it needs to adjust things. The other thing is the on the Mark II adapter, we were going to use a USB to serial dongle for conveyors, so the conveyors can readjust the width of themselves automatically. So again, data comes from Hermes. Hermes says a board width, and then the conveyor can, and then that data gets piped down the serial port, and then the conveyor can then readjust, and in that process the conveyor will go from it won't be board available, it won't be machine available at that point, and so no boards will go into the conveyor at that point, and until the conveyor then goes machine ready, then the board will be requested to come into the conveyor or the machine or whatever you've got it attached to it. So that's that all testing went very well. This is just to trigger off to say we've got board data, and then the conveyor belt would have started moving at that point, which hard to see it in that video because there's a stopper at the end of it that makes the board doesn't go off the end, but yeah, that all worked well. So that was the testing. From a lockdown point of view, two of our suppliers were affected by the lockdown. One went to limited time, so it became a bit of a slow ping-pong email kind of affair. Another supplier was only working with NHS customers at that point. They were obviously making the ventilator types stuff that seems to be gone now, seems to have gone quiet. There was a lot of panic, wasn't there, at that point about what happens if people go onto ventilators. What I've heard is you're pretty stuffed if you go onto a ventilator anyway, so it was one of those situations. All the inquiries disappeared overnight, and it was quite amusing because as soon as everyone started to go back to work, inquiries started to flood in again. It was like I'm sure that happened industry-wide. I've had to, obviously I'm always spinning hats, spinning plates. So I try to avoid what I like to call snowball delay, which is because you don't know when other people are going to deliver stuff to you, whether it's an email or whether it's a piece of hardware or whatever. The temptation is, because there's already been a delay waiting for a supplier to supply you, then it sits on your desk for another week or so, and then that creates another delay in the process. So the strategy I ran, which has its downsides also, which is to just basically drop everything and then work on getting those questions answered and trying to move on whatever that is that a supplier is waiting on you for. From the hardware point of view, that's a real struggle when you're having to answer questions about hardware and then you're trying to do software at the same time. It's a very difficult to switch tasks. I'm not got it down to an art. I haven't got it down to an art where I'm working on software one day, hardware the next, marketing the next, correspondence the next. I haven't got it down to that way of working yet. I need to get down to kind of project planning, I guess you'd call it. But again, that has a downside, because if you then say I'm only going to work on this one day a week, then it has to wait a whole week, and you might have people waiting for you, and that's where that kind of snowball delay creeps in. I know when I worked in industry, that was a common problem, which is we were delivering something that should have been delivered yesterday. It was 6 months, 9 months, 12 months late, and then by the time we actually delivered it, we got no response from the customer. Why? Because the customer wasn't ready for it, and so it sat on someone's desk for another 3 months. It's a common problem. Again, it's about getting in the mindset of traction within the industry, getting a quick mindset. The slower the industry is, the more delays there are, the more delays there are, the more delays there are. Simple as that. Yeah, from the adapter's point of view, Mk3 ready to go now. Ready to press the button to make lots of them. Should really be taking pre-orders at this point. Finance ran out, but it was based upon a lot of very big guesstimates. So we've applied for more funding, and we've got it because we've made good progress. We've got a thing to show. It's working for an industry. Industry wants it. It ticks all the boxes. I wish more products were like that. There's so much disruptive technologies. You have to make disruptive products and all this kind of. And unfortunately, governments align to that because they know investors love that. And what we're doing is making supportive technologies. We're making things that are going to help an industry. To me, it's quite obvious. You should fund startup businesses that have a partner that's going to supply you with information. It doesn't have to be a customer. It can be a partner that says, we've had this problem in the past. We're too big to make this small thing. We don't want to put resource on it, but you're a startup business. You want to get into the market. Take our ideas. It should be like that. I have thought about, can we create some sort of problem bucket? I did pose that to a group of people at a startup event, and one lady said to me, that sounds a bit negative. So it'll have to be a challenge, I guess, a challenge or whatever. But generally, we need an avenue where companies can say, these are our challenges, and if you want to work on them, please do, because that's where I think countries should be focusing their efforts on, is making products that support existing industries, not disrupt them. Why would a government want to invest in technologies that are disruptive, that are going to disrupt an industry. Reality is, from a UK point of view, that if you are a disruptive company, you're going to be bought out by someone abroad. And so that IP and that company is going to go abroad anyway. So why would a government, well, UK government, and I would say most of the European governments want to do that? Because the reason is because they know that the next stage of a startup business is the investment, the big investment, and that comes from investors communities that want that disruptive nature. But I don't agree with it. I believe we should just be helping our existing industries out. Anyway, bit of a rant, sorry about that. But yeah, just generally continuing as normal. I was already working from home, so it hasn't affected me. It did affect me though in the emotional sense, because at the end of the day, what I like to do is go out to say that's the end of the day or the end of the job. And even in lockdown, no one was able to move about. We were allowed 1 or 2 hours of exercise a day. So the pinch points of the week to meet up with former colleagues or friends or whatever, I wasn't able to do that. So I was as trapped in as the next person. But it was just interesting to hear people's experience of working from home, because I've been doing that for the last 3 years now, Monday to Friday, just getting in that mindset. But of course it's been great to see all the kind of digital first videos, the Zooms that have come from it, and hopefully this is a changer for the future, because suddenly we've had to those factories that have told us we can't remote in, we've had to remote in. We've had to use all the IT technologies out there to do it, and is this going to catapult the fourth industrial revolution? I hope so. So just to recap of what I've already said about the modular aspect of the Hermes SMEMA adapter, using the potential solutions could be using the Brainboxes ED-038, which is displayed here. So it's an Ethernet device, so essentially the software communicates through it via Ethernet, and it has the appropriate I/O for the SMEMA interface, as the right digital inputs and outputs to it. And I will create a separate video of how to use the MultiPlug, the Hermes extension, and one of these. You would also need the Brainbox extension on top of the MultiPlug to interface with this hardware. But again, it's one of those situations where this was actually one of the first extensions we created to interface with this hardware, because Brainboxes were very quick at contacting us right at the start, because they're a company that want to move into the factory space. Of course, we're talking about electronic assemblies and SMT. They traditionally work in any sort of factories. UK is, you speak about manufacturing in this country, and the first thing they speak about is food manufacturing. So these guys have been working in sort of that sort of domain, or any sort of I/O, remote I/O, and it all works over the Ethernet, so it's quite easy to. You don't really have to understand what happens in between. You just basically it communicates in a sense a local API, and then it gets transferred over to the box using their SDK. So I will make a video of how to use that setup, because it's great that you can swap and change solutions, and I will do that. Another thing I want to highlight is I was talking about serial ports for the Hermes adapter from the Mark II. We were going to use a dongle. The Mark III has a serial port attached to it at all times. I think it's going to be a default feature, because it's such a handy thing to have a serial port, whether you want to interface with a conveyor, and all the conveyor manufacturers have basically asked for that feature, but also a serial based barcode reader, or anything really. It's just a nice convenient a connector, like for anything you want to use it for. Could be also just remote debugging or whatever. But so the Mark III will have that as a default option, I imagine, because it's not exactly that expensive to put in. So in the miniaturization of the product from Mark II to Mark III, that's what we've injected. But I'll make sure I make that video in the future. So one of the great things about lockdown has been the acceleration to finally present online first of all new products or just discussions, bring more people together that would normally be across the world or might not be able to attend trade shows, for example. Again, we're a lean business, we can justify attending trade shows, but it's a big risk. It's a big risk. You're not sure of who you're going to speak to. You're not sure whether appointments are going to not occur when you finally get there. It's just a very pressurized environment. So it's been really nice to see that the journalists who have normally attended these trade shows have moved online. They normally publish their content online, but they've been able to interview people. And Scoop TV have been one of the ones that have been conducting a number of interviews, and they're just so much nicer to listen to because they're just relaxed. They're people of all different parts of any business. They're not just the marketeers. I mean, you listen to the Productronica ones, and it's always, oh, we've got this great new product, great. Where is it? Well, we're not actually demoing it today. It reminds me of the mobile phone shop of yesteryear, where you go in and see a dummy mobile phone, and you would like, well, can I have a play with it, please? And they would go, oh, well, no, actually, we haven't got one to play with. It's like, you're selling a mobile phone, I can't play with it. And Productronica is a bit like that. You want to go and play around with the machines, and they're not really hooked up properly. We've started to see that a bit more with the CFX stuff. We've started to see real lines working and stuff like that. But the next phase on to do, the next improvement of that is you actually go online and you demo your kit. So we've had Scoop doing all these interviews, and they've been great. Also, I noticed that ASM released their new printer, and they did some sort of impact day. I'm sure the whole industry is doing this kind of stuff, but it's so obvious, isn't it? You create an environment where you can demo your stuff. You put a camera in. You talk to your local graduate of video production. You get them in. You get them involved in this industry that they probably don't know anything about. You create some nice motion graphics, and well, hey, you've got a great output of what you're doing and what you're saying. And it's great to see that, because oh my god, the amount of money they would spend on trade shows. And again, it was a jolly for the salespeople, of course. You need to physically see these machines in working at some point, but I think you could have a bit of both. You don't necessarily have to have a trade show. And again, we have to reflect of what the software industry have done, and what the games industry have done, and what Apple have done. What do they do in their kind of world? There clearly still is trade shows, and clearly the need for them, but every company can deal with it a different way. So it's been great to see. It's been great to feel that I have the same level of information as the next person. Well, it previously did feel a bit like you have to be in the club. You have to know the right people. You have the relationships. And again, relationships take time to form. So when you've got them, they're great. They're their personal relationships. Same goes back to knowing salespeople. If you're sending off a cold email to someone, they don't reply. But if you have that level of relationship, suddenly they just want to have a chat, which was great. But This is a bit more, if I start a business, like the salespeople, I don't want to waste time. I just want to understand what you're doing. So this video they released, I will do a separate review of their new printer, and try to just throw in some ideas of like what we would want from the machine, from a CFX point of view, from a Hermes point of view. Just essentially we are a middleman customer. We are taking data and transforming it. So we are, in the future, we will be part of the mix. Now, I don't think that's happening today. We are just the hangers-on at the moment. They deal with their customers, and they don't see an ecosystem. And of course, Apple and Google, they have an ecosystem. They realise that if you bring in the people of the same discipline into the mix, then great stuff gets formed. I don't think we're there yet. We're currently at the stage of, I imagine the bigger software suppliers get first access, if they get access at all, and it always has to be driven by a customer. The first question they ask always is, who's your customer? I was like, I don't have a customer. I just want to know what data you can supply me with. That's all I need to know at this time. So yeah, I'll do a quick sort of review of this new printer. Not for any reason apart from it's locked down, and they've quite rightly displayed their presentation online, and it's great to see that, because you can see progress. It actually forms. There were, unfortunately I haven't written down the time codes or the videos, but there were 3 videos that took my fancy from the Scoop videos. That was one on online at home, the future of conferences, which I've just explained about, change, but also digital disruptors. This one here, which I'll just play right now, and I'll give some commentary at the end.
As a robotics company, we don't build robots, but that was how we started. And so I remember doing a trip in China where I connected with a bunch of people and went and saw their factories, like, what kind of robotics are you doing? And I was really struck. I remember being brought into this room where they were building dongles of some kind. And he's like, yeah, look at this process. Like, this machine that's super big replaces 12 operators. And we just have one at the front pushing in parts and one at the back pulling out parts. So we save a lot of money. And I was like, that sounds great. And he's like, no, it sucks, because our customer comes in and they see this and they're like, okay, I'm going to pay for that guy and that guy. 2 people.
Yeah.
And so instead of them being able to charge for 14 people worth of headcount, and then 12 of those, which is automated, they're only able to get their customer to pay for the 2. And so it makes it really difficult for the ROI to tape out. It's still possible, but it makes it really difficult. And as an analogy to other types of technologies, the benefits, customers kind of expect that those benefits get passed on to them. The customers of the EMS expect to get passed on, which is frankly pretty unfair in the industry to the EMS industry, that their customers have those expectations, or they're trying to pass on the savings so they can be cheaper. And so I think it's kind of a little bit funky, the incentives. And so it's another
good way of describing it, funky. That's a great problem of not only selling a product, a solution that is more efficient, but also creating a startup business. Because if you kind of undervalue or think too small, then everyone thinks you're thinking too small. If you think too big, you probably might not achieve it. And it's always the crux of actually getting a customer to pay for what you're making. As soon as your customer pays for what you're making, you valued your startup business. And I've had both advice along the way. It's like, get it out, ship it, get it out. Or there's the actual, no, we're in the dream phase at the moment. and we want to pass the dream phase on to the next investor down the line, and they need to dream with us to feel big. Because we're bootstrapping at the moment, I'm not thinking big. I'm thinking appropriately sized, and everything has actually worked out quite well. In regards to actually efficiency savings with the industry, there is a great culture conflict with the old way of doing things, which is very expensive, versus the lean way of doing things, which is the future. Salespeople, I don't think, come into that mix. If you're doing things lean, it's e-commerce, it's work from home. It's very appropriate to where we are at the moment with the virus, and I don't think that's been considered at the moment. Where everyone's going, oh, we're working from home and we can do things much leaner. We can do things what we've been wanting to do for the last 15 years, and finally, the management who have probably clawed us back to the workplace have now, well, it's beyond their control for a start, but also the ones that, like the people in the office, have had to give up that, and those managers who are maybe a little bit more, they realise that they get more stuff done from the home, have been able to do that, and they won't be wanting to return. The other thing is, if you're a manager, do you want to be visible? If you're a well-paid manager and you attend presentations and you send emails and you do that kind of middle management stuff, do you really want to be visible again? No, it's much better to be at home. That's politics, but there is a difficult conflict, definitely when you're starting a business and also selling the product on, which is, if you look lean, you're not going to be able to charge any more than leanness. Leanness costs you. So it is like, where's the benefit there? Actually, it'd be much easier for me right now to go up, pitch myself to a large company, build them, or send them a quote that's quite large. Justify that, of course. Here's the 50, no, not 50, but here's the 10 engineers it's going to take to make this. We're taking the risk off you, and then the customer pays for it, and all the customer does is pass that cost on to their customer, and that's how it works. And I always say this, there is actually no incentive to make things more efficient. If the end customers pay for it, if the consumer's happy to pay £1,000 for an iPhone 10 or whatever it is now, if they're happy to pay for that, and if the finance model has now been into a situation where you can break down that cost over 12 months or 24 months, then where's the incentive? The only incentive is our incentive, which is we want to come into a market and say, actually, well, you can do all your stuff you're doing today. You can do it quicker, you can do it cheaper. It doesn't really benefit us. It only benefits us as you enter that market. As soon as you're established players, as soon as you've got the salespeople and marketers, it doesn't benefit you. There is no benefit. And in times when companies want to be more efficient, i.e. you're running out of, you've got no sales, it's a recession or whatever, well, high-level management, they know how to act on that situation, which is to have redundancies, and that's how they deal with that. So I think it's a danger from a startup point of view to go in and have your only unique selling point as being you're cheap. It doesn't pan out, and I know many startups start that way, and I think most of them pivot away from that anyway. Again, because as you grow, you get more expensive. You bring in other cultures. I know a company very local to me, and they've been really successful in migrating from an agency to a company that makes a product for transportation, and they've been very successful with having no salespeople whatsoever. The engineers just attend the meetings, and it's very much those engineers own the problem and own the solution. But of course they can grow now. I've just noticed that they've put out a job offering for a salesperson. So, and they've they've conducted the presentation that I went to, and they admitted that the reason they've been so successful is because they haven't been driven by anyone. They've been driven by understanding the customer's needs, try to be the customer, eat your own dog food, scratch your own itch, simple methodology of creating great products before the customer asks for them. So they're in a danger point now because they've grown. But it's an interesting dilemma, and it will, of course, it will be driven by the people in the company at the time. So at the moment, I'm not a salesperson, I'm not a marketeer, so I don't believe in them, and I believe they're wonderful people. They are quite often, they focus on certain sectors and certain customer groups and certain segmentations within those sectors. If you're not in that box, they move on quite quickly, which is fine because they don't want to waste their time. But where does innovation come along? In that mindset, there is no innovation because they just want their sale at the end of the day, and they want to burn fuel and they want to go on the planes and have their jollies. It's not appropriate for a company that's trying to be lean. But I can completely understand why customers or companies go towards that unleanness over time. So in all the marketing and sales bashing I constantly do about trying to move towards a leaner business, a business more appropriate for the digital economy, I found two videos that quite summarise the difference in thought, both from people from successful businesses, one from more of a hardware point of view, the other one from more of a software digital economy point of view. One is Robert Saxby, talking about being voice of the customer, making products that the customer actually wants to buy ahead of time, and that of Steve Jobs, who says, eat your own dog food, use the product as intended, and then scratch your own itch to solve those problems that customers might want in the future, ultimately trying to deliver products before the customer has even asked for them. So here's Robert Saxby of ARM, or he was the CEO of ARM at one point.
Hi, I'm Robin Saxby, I'm the founding CEO of ARM. And one of the other things I say with technologists is you have to listen to the voice of the customer, and if you do that, you might get a good result. And one of the things I say to all the startups I'm involved in is customer pull is 1,000 times more important than technology push. So understand the explicit needs of the customer and give them the solution. That's the key to success. And I kind of learned that from Motorola with all the marketing workshops and all the application workshops. I think Motorola taught me how to do that.
Again, he was an application engineer working in hardware, and very much trained to think the way he thought. But ARM became a very successful business in the process.
What happens is, like with John Scully, John came from PepsiCo, and they at most would change their product, once every 10 years. So if you were a product person, you couldn't change the course of that company very much. So who influenced the success of PepsiCo? The sales and marketing people. Therefore, they were the ones that got promoted, and therefore they were the ones that ran the company. It turns out the same thing can happen in technology companies that get monopolies. If you were a product person at IBM or Xerox, so you make a better copy or a better computer. So what? When you have a monopoly market share, the company's not any more successful. So the people that can make the company more successful are sales and marketing people, and they end up running the companies. And the product people get driven out of the decision-making forums. And the companies forget what it means to make great products.
That interview was made in the mid-90s, and as you see, nothing really has changed since then. So the fourth industrial revolution is hopefully the movement towards the more alignment of the digital economy, which is about creating products before customers even want them. The danger there, of course, from a startup point of view, is to get a lot of companies that are making products that people don't want. So there needs to be industrial experience in the mix. So hopefully that was a quick overview of our progress in the last 6 months We've survived lockdown. We've survived the virus. Bootstrapping certainly helps, and having a financial runway helps in that situation. I've noticed by watching all the other videos that a lot of the other software companies have used the time to focus on documentation and things like that, and all to just having the time to tidy up existing projects. I think most people I know have just got on with it. I don't think there's been any failures in the industry. I'm not sure. There's certainly, from a industry point of view, there's a lot of consolidation occurring. That has its benefits, because finally I think the industry is starting to use the products as the customer uses the products, and so therefore we can start to create products that customers want before they know they want them. There's a slight danger there, where if you're there's always been a drive to create line solutions. The danger of that situation is you as an equipment supplier start focusing on your own equipment again, so kind of start to become a bit more inward looking. So once they're happy with their first step towards a line solution, or with the CFX for example, it's a good time to knock on the door of companies such as ourselves to just get our feedback. Have very simple challenges just to create very silly solutions that can just prove concepts, and that's what I will be doing in the future with the equipment that comes out. I will be asking to connect to the CFX and see what data I can get out of it. We're always looking for collaboration, challenges, ideas, anything of that sort. It doesn't harm to say hello. It's more efficient for you to contact us. This is on the screen here is a good example of wanting alpha testers or even beta testers of the SMEMA adapter, but generally anywhere, any sort of solution you've got an idea for, it's good to run it by me to see if we can collaborate in some way. The other thing to remember that you might not consider is that there's a lot of public funding out there, and it's quite helpful to have a partner on board to get that public funding. So we could create a solution for you, but actually it's being paid for by the public sector, the governments, the buckets of money that are out there, and it obviously helps our pitch to say, actually we've got a partner that's actually wanting this already, and that's why the Hermes adapter has been so easy to pitch for the money, funding for it, because there's an industry out there that's requiring it. And so don't see any sort of contact as either us wanting to be paid or you having to have the finance up front, because it's a collaboration in the true sense, in the sense of we do something very quick just to gain some traction, and then we can get around the table and then consider if any of the solutions need to be made a bit more mature. But it's in the true spirit of innovation, of just playing around with some ideas. Innovation is play, and so if you're not playing, if you're just being, again, I say it quite often, if you're just being driven by the voice of customer, then you're always going to be late. So let's try and collaborate. The same with other startup businesses. If you're watching this as a startup business, the biggest downside of being a startup business is you meet other startup businesses who are also very focused on what they're doing. And I learned very early on not early on in the startup world, but just I was always a very focused person. I realised I went to a talk and they said, if you're too focused, you're blinkered. So to collaborate from a startup point of view is also a brilliant thing. So as long as we can be lean, as long as we can communicate via the internet, then it works. I think that works. Let's not be too blinkered about the missions we're trying to focus on here. Let's try to sit down once in a while and just have a recap of where we're trying to go with this. For me, the fourth industrial revolution is the people revolution. The MultiPlug is a browser-based solution. The user interface anyway is a browser-based, and that's trying to appeal to the digital economy engineers out there. So I'm trying to everything we do is about people, and we're trying to bring in people. And in the past, there's been an effort of trying to bring people directly into our industry. I don't believe that's the future, because there's so much wealth and opportunities out there for people to work in other industries. What we need to do is collaborate with those people in the digital economy to say to them, you don't need to know about production or electronics, but what we have here is data, and there's a user interface, and we need escalation, we need a level of data mining of that information, and they can do all that for us. They don't have to come to our industry. So yeah, people is always a focus of my interest, not technology. Technology is most of it is all we could have done this years ago. It's just that, again, the change in attitude of people. Lockdown is a good example. We might have a big change of attitude now in the future, and the people will change along the way, which will create the revolution that we've been talking about for a long time now, but they don't happen overnight. So if you have been, thank you very much for watching. I will try to update you more frequently in future, but for now, thank you very much. Goodbye.